Hi, Honest Discussioner here. I just got done watching the last movie that my stepfather gave me in his attempt to convert me from an evil heathen to the more acceptable, good Christian boy. Of course, evangelical, young Earth creationism, Christianity, because that's the only correct one, of course. And that video that I watched was Lee Strobel and the Case for Faith. Now, the other two movies had varying degrees of success that I watched. The first one was absolutely terrible. I'll link them in the sidebar, my reviews of them. And the second one was decent. It was good for the agnostic. It might actually be successful against someone who never thought about this before, had no information, just never really thought about God or Jesus or anything. And it would have made a decent argument to those people, but none of the people that I know, let's put it that way. This movie, at first I thought it was, again, geared toward just Christians in general and getting them to psyched about their religion and how right they are. On second thought, by the end of the movie, I kind of felt it was more for people who were like... I think his name was John Templeton. I may have gotten the first name wrong. He's featured in the movie as a person who, back in his heyday, was on the level or even greater than Billy Graham as far as an evangelical leader. Back when black and white TVs were modern technology, and he gave it all up because he couldn't believe in it anymore. He tried very hard, and he even went to theological seminary for years, and just he lost his faith. So I think this was geared towards people who were losing their faith. Again, not really me. I had already, I've already lost it for a very, very long time now. It's been years. Now, the arguments made in this video are very bad. Let's just put it that way. Of course, he has the usual historical arguments, like wouldn't die for a lie argument, which Prof. MTH handled quite nicely. The Jesus has fulfilled many messianic prophecies, which Prof. MTH also handled. Basically, Prof. handled everything that Strobel threw out in regards to historicity and the gospel accounts. So those fail right on there. But now you can watch Prof's videos on there. I'm sure most of you know him by now. He's really good. From a philosophical basis, they brought in a lot of relatively heavy muscle. They quoted a lot of C.S. Lewis. They had N.T. Wright. We have our favorite gay-bashing preacher. I'm forgetting his name now. Rick Warren in there. And really, they were, the way that they were presenting it, it was an overall fail from my perspective, but I can see how a Christian or an agnostic watching this would really get into it. They had some very emotional scenes. There was one woman who was, at a very young age, paralyzed from the neck down, I think. And I think she has since regained her arms. But it talks about how she has become a Christian through this, and there's lots of other things like that, which I'll get into in another video, I think, because there's no way to be able to handle all of the arguments in this one. But yeah, they had N.T. Wright and a lot of very big Christian muscle, but still, from the philosophical basis, when you're watching these people, and these are people they splice together, and yet even still, there's a bit of contradiction between the two. Much of it is, even when it's not contradictory, much of it is still, it's pretty much all circular. It's all circular reasoning, opinion on what is the best. There's a lot of argument that Jesus is unique, and therefore he must be God, and things like that. There's also...
Suppose God knew that there was only one necessary and sufficient means to take care of the human dilemma. That would be sending his only begotten Son. Well, if there's only one sufficient means, please don't send me the pretenders. And if there's only one necessary means, we don't need any other ones. Why would God want to send 1,500 avatars or savior figures, none of which can completely do the job. What's the point of that when he can send his son and it's accomplished in one person at one time through one set of events once for all? And that's the essence of why Jesus is the only way. He's the only sufficient and necessary means by which we may be saved.
I'm going to have to pull a page out of Coctopus for that one. Feel free to use that one too, by the way, Coctopus. This is what I mean when I say that this was directed at those who are losing their faith. No one would buy this if they had already lost it. The person who Lee Strobel apparently was arguing for, or arguing to this Templeton, he wanted to convince this man. I'm not saying it was the basis for his book, but it was mentioned in there. To try to use something along those lines as an argument is just silly. It assumes every part of the argument is true. That is the most circular argument I've ever heard in my entire life. And this is the majority of the arguments that are on the video, and also the arguments that my stepfather gives me every time we've had this type of conversation. Now, Strobel also brings up free will, which of course you know is going to pique my interest. And let's listen to this gentleman here. I'm citing fair use, because I'm going to be commenting on these. I better not be getting any DMCAs.
God is not looking down at the world at different religious clubs, the Muslim club, the Christian club, the Jewish club, the Hindu club, and you're not saying, I like the Christian club better, to hell with the rest of you, quite literally. No, he's looking down at humanity, who is desperately wicked compared to his standards, who desperately needs to be rescued. And he offers a pardon, and he gives people an opportunity to either accept it or reject it. And this is why Jesus is the only way, because he's the only one who solved the problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go for Coctopus again. Alright, now here's the whole thing with free will, and the issue that you have with this sort of argument. The problem of evil isn't really a problem for the deist, in my opinion, because you could argue that certain amounts of evil can be good, and that's an argument they make in this video as well. But the idea that God gives you the opportunity to reject or accept him relies on two things to be true. One, the most obvious one, is that you have to actually know about God. You actually have to hear about Jesus. How can you accept something you have no knowledge of? If someone going to give me a way to do that, I'd love to hear it. I really would. Now, the second thing is that you have to understand what you're accepting and what you're rejecting. Now, for someone who's in Islam, are they rejecting the one and only Savior? In reality, perhaps. But when they're rejecting Jesus, they don't believe they're rejecting the one and only Savior. They don't believe they're rejecting the right thing. They don't believe they're rejecting what's good, or what they're supposed to be rejecting, or what they're supposed to be accepting. They think they are rejecting something that is very evil, that is blasphemy. And why? What would cause them to do it any differently? They are doing what should be expected of them under what they know about religion. And for the first example, you have to know of it. I pointed this out. I literally beat this with a dead horse. Millions of people have lived their entire lives without ever hearing of Jesus. And yet, so therefore, you can't say that God gives you the choice. Even if there is free will, you can't exercise your free will in accepting Jesus if you're not aware of him. And even if you are aware of him, if you think he's a bad guy because people have told you so, and you have no other reason to think differently than that, of course you're going to reject him, and that should not be held against someone. There was one part in the movie where the guy says that not only is God omnipotent and omniscient, but also omni-understanding, whatever the word is for that. He is all understanding. And this doctrine that they try to pass, this grace, and what they talked about in there, and what Christians often mention, especially Catholics to my knowledge, it is not indicative of a truly understanding God. It's indicative of a very unwise God, a very just not smart, not caring. This isn't what you'd expect, and yet these people do come to the exact opposite conclusion. There's more on this. I'm gonna have to cut this short because I'm probably going over again. I'll be doing a video response to Mig Killer next on agency, and then I'll come back to this later. Have a nice day. Honest Discussioner, out.